Hi guys, so today we're checking out the Alpine 9-inch Halo 9 plug-and-play dash kit fitting all 2016 and newer Toyota Tacomas. So if you are in search of an upgrade to the interior of your Tacoma, if you're looking for an upgrade in technology, a head unit is always a great place to start, and this one by Alpine is going to be a high quality head unit that you'll definitely want to take a look into. Now this is going to have a large 9-inch touchscreen display, and it's also going to have a floating feature for the display. Now I personally really like this. It looks very different in comparison to a lot of other choices, gives it a very modernized feel, and you're getting a large display here that's going to allow you to very easily use the device and easily use all of the features. So I would like to mention that the gauges are not showing any data because the truck is not on. So once your Alpine unit is installed and your truck is turned on, the Alpine unit will load up and it's going to take you to this screen. Now this is going to be your main screen that you see whenever you get inside your truck. Now this is going to have a couple of applications up at the top that you'll be able to utilize. You're going to have some shortcuts down at the bottom, and then you're going to have your controls. Now the controls are pretty straightforward. You'll be able to use your Siri or your Google for the microphone setting here, your favorites, your home screen, your Seek for your radio, and then you'll be able to control your volume here with a mute button as well. Now this is going to be your main radio control. Now you'll be able to utilize this just as normal or any other radio. And I really like the display here. It does switch it up from the factory quite a bit. Now if you hit this drop down button, this will allow you to fine-tune your audio as far as the internal cab area audio goes, and some tone adjustments and a couple of other things in here. Now this is also going to display your Bluetooth device list and your device priority. So if you are having your phone in here most of the time, it's most likely going to hook up to that. Now once you close this, if you tap this bottom tab there, that drop down screen is going to bring you back to the main home screen, and so will this button here. Now if we go over, you'll be able to see some of the applications that are already on the Alpine device. Now because Apple CarPlay is in here, this is going to be your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. Then you can scroll over, Pandora, as well as Bluetooth audio, and then music over on this side. So it basically is contingent on whatever you have last used. So after you're finished with your applications up top, we can head into the shortcuts down at the bottom here. Now this application for your phone is going to bring you up to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, whatever you are using. I am currently using my iPhone, so this is going to display the Apple CarPlay screen. Now this is going to have everything that is usually displayed on your phone here, your music that you'll be able to control via this screen. You'll be able to control your navigation as well. And if you hit this button down here, you'll be able to use Siri. Now, if you're using Android Auto, you will use Google and so on. So it kind of translates through there. So after you're finished with your Apple CarPlay, we can go back and check out some of the other features. Now this is going to be a shortcut just for your phone, but there's also going to be a shortcut for standard Apple CarPlay that'll bring you back into that setting as well. You're going to have notifications over on the side. I don't have any notifications on my phone right now, so it's not displaying, but if you do get a notification, you will have a shortcut for that there. Now the one thing that I do really like about this system is the fact that this is going to display vehicle information. Now that is what that OBD2 plug is for. You'll be able to see all of your information, real-time data on this display here. You'll have your speed, your load, your RPM, intake, and you'll also have your fuel, and you can switch them up. Now this is also going to display some other vehicle information, your tire pressure, your voltage on your battery, and so on. And you can go into the settings and adjust some stuff there. If you do have a check engine, your door alert, tire alert, TPMS status, you can check and most likely adjust everything in there. Now, what I also really like is the fact that this meshes very well with the interior of the truck. Now, this will have that floating display here, but it is going to have a very good fit. You can tell that there's a lot of detail in the design as far as the construction is concerned, and it's a pretty straightforward install and a pretty straightforward design, making it incredibly user-friendly. Now, this is also going to retain all of the factory features that your factory head unit had, and it will retain all of your steering wheel controls as well. Now, this is going to come with a main control unit that you'll be able to program, and you'll also be able to customize. So not only are you getting this system and the technology itself, but you're able to customize this to your personal setup, and it will come with everything that you need in order to do that. So overall, this is going to be great for somebody who's looking for a more premium choice. They're looking for a larger display screen, and they're also looking for something that's a little bit out of the box in comparison to some other choices. Now, with all of that being said, this is going to be a little bit more expensive than some other choices, coming in at roughly $1,500, but head units are never really inexpensive. And I personally think that with all of the features, the display, the construction, and how well it fits inside the cab area here, not only the actual fitment, but just how well it meshes with the interior, that price definitely is worth it. Now, in comparison to some other options, like I said, a lot of other choices are really not going to have this halo display or the floating display here. A lot of other choices are going to have a flush design with this bezel here. So if you are looking for something a lot different, and also a head unit that's going to have a more modernized feel as far as the technology is concerned, this is going to be a great choice. Now, as far as install is concerned, I'm going to give this a 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. As it says in the name, it is a plug-and-play dash kit, so it is going to be pretty straightforward when it comes to installing this head unit here. Now, you will need to download a program in order to program the actual control module in order to retain all of the factory features on your steering wheel and a couple of other things that you need to customize to your specific truck. I do really like that because it is a little bit personalized to you and your truck, but it's not going to take you any longer than about an hour with some very basic hand tools. So speaking of the install, let me walk you through that right now. The tools that I used for my install were an impact wrench, flathead screwdriver, a soft pry tool, 10mm socket, a magnet, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a wire grabbing tool. So our first step to removing our head unit here is to remove this bezel around the sides. So I'm going to take a pry tool. I would recommend using a soft pry tool, and I'm just going to pry up on each kind of side of our bezel here. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to pull forward. It's going to be held in by a number of clips. We can move this to the side, and then we'll be able to access the bolts that are holding on our head unit. So I'm going to use a 10mm socket to remove those 4 bolts holding in our head unit. Remember to save those bolts, put them in a safe location, and then we can pull our head unit out towards us and start to disconnect the wires at the back. This might be a little bit difficult to see. So these are going to be a couple of the main harnesses. We're actually going to have a decent amount of plugs back here. So before we hop into this install, I did want to stop down and tell you guys a little bit more about this new Alpine system, especially in comparison to our factory one, and show you what benefits that you're going to get out of this that you're not seeing with the factory. Now, starting off with the overall setup, our factory system is going to have a 7-inch screen. You're going to have a large interface here, but it is going to have a couple of mechanical features in comparison to our Alpine system, where it is completely neckless, and it's going to have a full touchscreen display. So over on our factory system, we're going to have a couple of buttons, we're going to have a couple of dials, and we're going to have that 7-inch screen. Now, this is a touchscreen display. However, it's not going to have all of the features that you will see out of this new Alpine system. It's going to have all of those standard features, and it will include Bluetooth, and it's going to basically have all of the stock features that you would expect out of a head unit. Now moving over to this option by Alpine, this is going to have everything and more that you would want out of a system. Now this will be compatible with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. This is going to have navigation on the unit and really everything that you would want out of a multimedia center in your truck. Not to mention, this will come with a plug for your OBD2 sensor, so you will be able to read real-time data, including gauges, and you'll be able to see everything that's going on with your truck, like TPMS sensors, and if the car door is open. You can see that right on the system instead of seeing it actually on the cluster gauge in the middle on your Tacoma. Now, what I do really like about this is not only the technology that's behind this, but also the look and the overall construction. Now, you're going to have the single DIN instead of a double DIN. This is a double DIN. It's going to be a lot thicker than the single DIN. If you can see, it is going to be a lot thinner over here, and this is going to install in your dash, but since this is the Halo, this is going to be a floating display, so it's going to come out a little bit more, giving you a more modernized feel to the interior of your truck, and of course be a big step up from your factory system that just sits flush inside your dash. So overall, this is going to be a big step up in technology. It's going to give the interior a big refresh as far as technology and looks go, and overall it's going to be a very functional unit. So what do you say we go ahead and install our new system? So before we can head over to our Tacoma, we have to piece together our head unit. We're going to have three main pieces here. We're going to have our display, we're going to have our DIN or our main control box, and then we're also going to have our module that's going to more or less work as the brain of the whole operation. This will have to be programmed. You can download the application on your computer. It is compatible with Apple as well as Windows, but you are going to have to download it and go through all of the settings on your Tacoma, make sure that everything matches your specific truck. You're going to have to put in the serial number for the head unit and a couple of other things. You will be able to customize your steering wheel controls and all of your factory controls in there as well. So you can kind of customize the system to your application, but that is all going to be in the data link system, and you can download that onto your computer. There is instructions in the actual instruction manual on how to do that, but since we have already done that, what we can do is start to piece it together. So I'm going to start with the display. You're going to need a magnetized screwdriver in order to do this because it is going to be a little bit tight when we install this onto our main DIN unit. So as you can see, this is where our display is going to plug in. This is just going to slide right over the top, and you'll feel it click into place just like that. Now in here is where we need to secure it. It is going to be a little bit difficult to see, and that's why you will need a magnetized Phillips head screwdriver, because we're going to have to go down in and secure that in place. Now I'm using these screws that are provided in the kit. So now that the two top screws are in place, we need to install the two screws on this side. They are going to be a lot lower than those top screws, so you will need a longer screwdriver if you cannot reach them. Now, if you don't have a magnetized longer screwdriver, you can just take a magnet with a regular screwdriver, and you'll be able to utilize that as a magnetized screwdriver. A little bit of science there. So we can take that same style screw and screw it into the bottom. Once you get it attached there, thread it in. You don't really need the magnet anymore, but it's definitely helpful to have. So our last step to attaching these two is to attach our screw cover plate. Now this is going to go over those two top screws. There's going to be an attachment point up at the top. We have some hardware that we have to install this with in just a second. But what we have to do, it's not going to be able to go in at the top. We need to go around the side and kind of maneuver it in place. We're not going to have a lot of room to work with, but there is room behind here in order to kind of move it in place how we need it. Then we're going to take a small screw that's provided in the kit, our Phillips head screwdriver, and screw that into place. Now once that cover plate is on, what we can do is plug in our unit. If we turn this around, we're going to have a couple of plugs on the back. We're going to have our power, wireless remote, we'll have GPS, our Sirius XM, we'll also have our antenna, we'll have the pre-out and the CAN system here. We're also going to have an HDMI outlet and a USB outlet. We will be using the USB because if we are using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you will need to utilize the lightning cable and use a USB for the Android Auto. So we will be installing that there. But first we're going to get our Maestro, the RR installed. We're going to have our power, that's going to be the black connector here. You want to make sure that everything clicks into place properly. And you basically just make sure that the number of pins lines up to where you're plugging it in. You really can't install one plug and another plug because they have specific pin. These two blue wires need to be put together, and then we can take this connection. This is our antenna. Make sure that that's plugged in. We're gonna have an external wire for our GPS. Plug that in. We're gonna have our microphone. I'm not gonna plug this in right away just because we will need to route this in a location that suits us best. We're also going to have an OBD2 plug. This is going to plug into your OBD2 sensor. And this little plug is actually going to have an attachment or a plug on the other side right here. So I'm not gonna plug these two in just yet. That's contingent on how we run the wires inside our cab area. But now that everything is plugged in, we can head over to the truck. There is going to be a pre-out system. Now, depending on if you are going to be using an external amplifier or any other sound system that requires the pre-out, you will have cables for that, and you're also going to have a plug on the back of the unit here for that as well. So now we can head inside our Tacoma and plug everything in. So what we can do at this point is start to plug our control box or our module here into our existing wiring harnesses. Now again, these are just going to be pretty specific on the pin count on the actual plug. So you kind of just have to match them up. The larger one's going to be over on the side here. And you just want to make sure that they click in place and they're secure. You also want to do your best at keeping this as organized as possible. It kind of looks like a mess, but you do want to make sure that it is pretty organized for the most part. We can take our GPS, plug that in. And once everything is plugged in, we can test the system to make sure that it works. So now that everything is plugged into our head unit, we have to run 3 independent controls. So that is going to be the microphone, the USB, so you can use your Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and then we're also going to plug in our OBD2. So I'm going to start with the OBD2. We are going to run this underneath our steering wheel cover here, and then we'll be able to run it back and plug it into our control box there. So for this, you're going to need a 10mm socket, and we're going to take off this lower cover. So on either side of this bottom trim panel, we're going to have a 10mm screw. We can go ahead and remove. After that is off, we can take a soft pry tool and just start to pry on this trim piece. Now we don't need to fully remove it, we just need to route our wire up through here. So I'm actually going to plug in our OBD2, plug right there. So once that's routed through there, we can carefully put this back in place. We can reinstall those screws down at the bottom using that 10mm socket. And then we can work on our mic. So you want to make sure when you're mounting up your microphone that it's in a good location, considering you do have to talk to this. So you want to make sure that it's either mounted up here on the rear view, mounted up above you, or mounted kind of directly in front of you. Wherever your voice is projecting is where you want your microphone to be. So I am actually going to place it over here. I think this is the best location. You can really put it wherever you'd like. You can fully run this wire behind the dash, up the side, under the trim, and have it above you. But I think it's a little bit easier just to have it in front of you right there. And the trim piece, once we put it back on, the bezel will hold it in place. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of route this wire, or route the microphone down and through, just to kind of clean this up. And you are gonna have a decent amount of wire here, so if you want to run those to those places, you totally can. This is just my personal preference. So I'm just gonna place it here for the time being with our wire for our OBD2. We're just gonna plug it in at the end and then get everything in our dash. But the last thing that we have to do is plug in our USB. So you wanna make sure that the side that will accept a lightning cable like this one is correct and oriented in the correct way. So we're gonna take this side and run this inside our glove box. So what I recommend is taking the USB and putting it in the glove box side. You may not be able to grab it through the dash in the middle here. I just have a wire grabbing tool, and I am going to use that in order to pull this through. So our next step is just to plug these three things in. So we're gonna plug our USB in to the back of the head unit. We can plug our mic in to the plug that's on our main control box here, and our OBD2 to the plug on our main control box again. So now that everything is plugged in and you've confirmed that everything is working on your head unit, we will have to take the screen back off. Now, in order to make sure that it's working properly, it does have to be screwed on, and that cover plate does have to be screwed on there, and that's what I showed you guys on the table. Now, what we need to do is actually take that off, because the bezel will not fit around the display because it's a lot larger than the factory display. So I showed you guys on the table as a representation, just so you guys could get a better look at what we were doing from the top and those couple of screws that it took to put the actual display screen on. But what I'm gonna do now is actually take that off. We're gonna install this back portion of the head unit. We're gonna put the bezel back on, and then we're going to install our display last. Now, the reason for this, you kind of have to backtrack. It is a little bit inconvenient, but You definitely do want to make sure that the unit is working properly, and in order to do that, you will have to install those couple of screws as well as the cover plate, because it will not turn on if those are not installed. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take off the screen. We're going to push everything into the dash. We're going to mount up our head unit, and then we can mount up our bezel and then our display. So once those 4 factory bolts are in, what we can do is take our 10mm socket and tighten those up. You want to make sure not to over tighten this. The tabs are plastic and they will break if they're over tightened, so just be careful about that. But once that is in place, now we can grab our bezel, pop that back into place. We can grab our unit, making sure that it's faced the correct direction. Slide that in and reinstall those screws. Then we can take that small black screw, install and secure the cover plate. So after the unit is installed, you just want to make sure that you double check everything, make sure everything is back together. I did move over to the glove box here and put this back cover back on. Now, if it's sliding into place for me, but if it's not sliding into place for you, you can drill a small hole over on this side and route your USB through that to make it sit flush. However, everything is now plugged in and mounted up, and you'll be all set to go. So that is going to wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos and products just like this, and always keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.